Hello, and welcome to the Nutrition Diva podcast, a show where we take a closer look at nutrient research, headlines, and trends so that you can make more informed decisions about what you eat. I'm your host, Monica Reinagel, and as we head into another cold and flu season, you are probably hearing a lot of talk about boosting your immune system. And there are a lot of supplements that claim to help you ward off colds and other respiratory infections. But what does the science say? We often think about boosting immune function as similar to the way you might turn up the volume on your speakers, but that's not really how it works because the immune system is not just a single thing. It's a whole orchestra of different types of cells and chemical messengers that respond to different types of threats in a lot of different ways. So instead of that single volume knob, picture a giant mixing board with dozens of knobs and sliders that control different frequencies and aspects of the sound all working together to produce a harmonious effect. In other words, simply saying that a specific nutrient or herb boosts immune function doesn't really tell you very much. And furthermore, just because a nutrient is involved in some aspect of the immune response, it doesn't necessarily follow that taking large amounts of that nutrient is going to boost your immunity. And in fact, excessive amounts of some of those immune-boosting nutrients can even end up suppressing immune response. Now, that said, I hate colds as much as anyone else. And just as an aside, although face masks are no longer as ubiquitous as they were during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, I still keep them on hand. They are actually very effective in preventing transmission of airborne viruses, such as the ones that cause the common cold. So if I find myself in close quarters with someone who has obvious symptoms, like maybe sitting next to them on a plane or at a concert, I am delighted to have access to such an easy and convenient way to protect myself. And you know what? I have a lot fewer colds than I used to, and I think this is part of the reason why. But I digress. As I was saying, I hate colds as much as anyone else, so I can certainly sympathize with anyone who finds themselves tempted by products that promise to make them less susceptible to seasonal sniffles. So let's take a look at those that actually have some science to support them and how they are best used. Low vitamin D levels are linked to a higher risk of respiratory infections, and our vitamin D levels often dip in the winter when our exposure to sunlight is a lot more limited. And there is even research to suggest that taking a vitamin D supplement might reduce the severity of infections if you do end up catching a cold or flu. So this winter, you might want to focus on getting enough vitamin D either from foods or perhaps a supplement. Food sources include oily fish, milk, which is often fortified with vitamin D, liver, and egg yolks. And as I mentioned in a recent episode, mushrooms can also be a good source of vitamin D if they've been exposed to natural sunlight. Now, vitamin C has long been a go-to supplement for cold prevention. Unfortunately, vitamin C doesn't seem to reduce the likelihood that you will catch a cold. But as with vitamin D, taking a vitamin C supplement might shorten the duration and the severity of your symptoms. Now, there is a catch with this one. It looks like you can't wait until you feel the first signs of a cold to start pounding the vitamin C. It only seems to help if you're getting a good dose of C on an ongoing basis. Vitamin C is also one of those nutrients that is not stored in the body. So ideally, you do want to have some vitamin C-rich foods in your diet every day. Citrus fruit, strawberries, and kiwi are all good sources, but so are green peppers, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, even potatoes. Now, zinc lozenges may also help reduce the duration of cold symptoms, and unlike vitamin C, they are effective if taken at the first sign of illness. And in fact, this is one that you want to keep up your sleeve right there with your spare Kleenex until you actually need it. Sucking on zinc lozenges all the time can actually make them less effective in this regard. I have also used zinc lozenges for 24 hours or so after being exposed to someone who had obvious cold symptoms, even if I didn't feel sick myself. Now, taking zinc as a dietary supplement or eating foods that are rich in zinc does not seem to help reduce cold symptoms. You might also recall once upon a time we had zinc nasal sprays that were also marketed for cold prevention. And these have largely been discontinued because there's a risk of permanent damage to your sense of smell. It was a small risk, but who wants to take that chance? Some of the brands that sell zinc lozenges also still sell nasal sprays, but they no longer contain zinc. So if you have an old bottle of zinc nasal spray lying around, probably time to toss that one out. We're also hearing a lot more about the role of the microbiome, so the beneficial bacteria that live in our gut and their influence on immune health. One of the many benefits of cultivating a healthy gut population is a strong immune system. So, eating fermented foods and cultured foods such as yogurt, kefir, kimchi, and other fermented vegetables is a good practice. But eating a variety of fiber-rich foods may be even more impactful in that regard. But what about taking a probiotic supplement? There is a limited amount of evidence that probiotic supplementation might modestly reduce cold symptoms. The trick here is that these studies look at very specific strains of bacteria, and so it's really hard to extrapolate those results to the hundreds of different probiotic supplements that are on the market. Interestingly, some of the research that I reviewed seems to suggest that the beneficial bacteria in the mouth and the oral cavity, as opposed to the beneficial bacteria in your gut, may be part of the key to improving our defenses against colds and other respiratory infections. In particular, I was intrigued by a study using probiotic lozenges featuring a specific strain called Thermophilus K12, and they found that these lozenges reduced respiratory tract infections. It's interesting. I bet we're going to hear more about the oral microbiome in the future. You can also promote a healthy oral microbiome by brushing and flossing regularly, avoiding a lot of sugary foods and drinks, and drinking plenty of water. And many oral health experts also now advise against using mouthwashes containing alcohol because these decimate all the bacteria in your mouth, including the beneficial microbes and not just the bacteria that cause tooth decay and gum disease. And finally, we should talk about elderberry and echinacea, two popular herbal remedies. Neither one appears to be very helpful in preventing infection, but both do have some research supporting their use in reducing the duration and the severity of symptoms. So these are also remedies that you want to save for when you either think you might be getting sick or potentially for times when you feel like you might be at increased risk, such as when you're traveling or under stress. But they're probably not things that you want to take every day on an ongoing basis. Now, many of us have a specific protocol that we turn to when we think we're coming down with something. It might be echinacea and vitamin C. It might be elderberry syrup and garlic, or maybe zinc lozenges and ginger tea. Whatever our particular protocol is, we just believe that it helps. And honestly, that belief may actually be part of the magic. Taking positive action just helps us feel a little bit more in control of the situation. And that, in and of itself, plus our optimism, can actually make us feel better. In other words, the placebo effect is real. So why not take advantage of it? And finally, I should point out that nutrition is just one piece of this puzzle. Other things that can reduce your chances of getting sick and help you bounce back more easily if you do get sick include getting enough sleep, managing your stress, getting regular exercise, and finally, don't underestimate the power of good hygiene practices, frequent hand washing, avoiding close contact with sick individuals, and trying not to touch your face can all reduce the likelihood of getting a pesky cold this season. I hope this helps clear up some of the confusion around immune-boosting foods and supplements and gives you some actionable tips for staying healthy this season. If you have a question you'd like me to answer, you can email it to me at nutrition@quickanddirtytips.com. You can also leave me a voicemail at 443-961-6206. Nutrition Diva is a Quick and Dirty Tips podcast. Our team includes Brandon Getchis, Nathan Sems, Davina Tomlin, Holly Hutchings, Morgan Christensen, and Nate Hoops. That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.